Welcome back. So, in the first segment, I was sharing about becoming a father, which I've had the joy to experience on May 10th, bringing Keon into the world. Of course, I didn't do much. My wife brought Keon into the world on May 10th. And I wanted to share more about some of our experience. Um, and I could, of course, only share my experience. I can share thoughts from my wife that she shared with me of becoming parents. One thing um, that comes up for fathers is, should they be in the delivery room or not? Should they be there at all? Should they be there some of the time? And maybe for some people this is an obvious thing, but I heard lots of different things going into this process. And for me, it was, well, first and foremost, I think what's most important is what the mother who is birthing the child wants. Who do they want in the room? Who don't they want in the room? Um, and even working with couples in the pregnancy process, and then I tried to bring that same mindset, maybe my wife won't agree, into our own experience, is that although most things will say are 50-50 when you're in a marriage about how you both feel about things, when it comes to the whole pregnancy process and childbirth process, it's not 50-50. The wife, the one who is pregnant and giving birth, is the one who has more of the say in things. I think that should be pretty obvious, but doesn't mean you'll have no say. As I think the husband, you can have your thoughts on it, but the most important thing is for um, the person who is really going through it to feel good about how things are there. And so my wife was okay with me being there, something I wanted for myself to be there. And of course, I can't speak and give myself a grade, but I hope I did all right in the room. I wasn't quite sure what it was going to feel like, just like parenting itself and becoming a parent. You can imagine what it's going to feel like. You can imagine what you'd like to do or how you'd like to be, but you won't know until you experience it, what it will be like. And so we also took a class together, and I think the class was good. And really, the class was more to prepare me as the coach, they would call it, to help be there for my wife as best as I could, to be there for her, um, to inform me of different things, of the labor process. I think there's so many misconceptions about birth and labor and the whole process of it, from before and during and after, that I think it's important to get more informed. I mean, for example, even just things we see in movies, like when someone's water breaks, that, in every movie I've seen, that's been this kind of like big moment. The water breaks, they rush to the hospital. And I'm definitely not an expert. I should give that preface. So this is not medical advice. Please don't take it as medical advice, but from what I understood, I will share. Two things about that come to mind. One is, not everyone's water breaks. Not every woman will have that amniotic sac break before going into labor, or during the process. Even the baby can come out in it in instances. So that's not something you can rely on as an indicator to go to the hospital. And the second thing is, just because the water breaks doesn't mean you have to immediately go to the hospital. It can happen at different stages of labor. So you don't necessarily have to rush there. So for me, things like that and so many other things that I learned in this course that we did were very helpful to make me more informed, more comfortable. There are so many things that are happening, and of course, when you're going through that process of labor, when the birthing parent is doing that, when you're in the delivery room, so much is happening so fast, and the stakes are, of course, so high. You're worried about the health of the mom, the health of the baby, and everything that goes in that process, that you really want to be as prepared as you can be, as knowledgeable as you can be, so that when questions come up, choices come up, would you like an epidural or not? Would you like Pitocin or not? You can know, what do those things mean? What are the good, the bad, the risks, the consequences? And then also your preferences, very importantly. So that was important for me, and important through this part of the class in our communication, was for me to be as prepared as possible, to be as informed about the general things, but also informed from my wife's perspective of what she wanted, didn't want, what were her preferences, and those kinds of things. And of course, let me say all this because if you've listened to me before, I'm someone who doesn't like the general mindset often we see of people who are, whether they're talking on social media, radio, podcast, whatever it is, that they present themselves as someone who, did things perfectly, or you should learn from them. As you know, the series I'm doing is called Lessons I'm Learning because I'm not an expert on the things I talk about. I share my opinion based on what I've understood as a human, as a professional through reading, but by no means do I know some things in a way that no one else does. And also, as a human being, I am making lots of mistakes constantly. And so, my wife can tell you about those, I'm sure, very easily. All the ones I've already made in this short time that we've been parents. So, I tried my best, so I don't want to present this as I did some kind of model behavior and do it the way I did. But I do want to share from my experience the things that were helpful or meaningful, and what I think are some lessons I learned, lessons I'm learning to share with you about my experience. Because it reminds me of it's good to make a plan, as I was saying, to communicate as much as you can. But I'm reminded of that. I think it's sometimes attributed to Mike Tyson that everyone has a plan to get punched in the mouth. And so you make a birth plan. It is important to know what you want, what you don't want, but things start happening, and all of a sudden, things never go exactly as you plan or exactly as you're hoping they will go, and you have to be ready to deal with those punches and deal with those as they come. But I think we did a pretty good job of preparing in that way. And as I was saying, my overall thought is that as a husband, you should be in the delivery room. Now, what comes up for me when I say that is it's just like becoming a parent that I, especially now that I've experienced it, but already felt it, experienced it just for a few weeks, but still have had that honor. I think becoming a parent is amazing and is wonderful, but only if you want to become a parent and want to take on this role where you will be responsible for taking care of this being, that it will be a one-way relationship in the sense that you don't own your children, you owe your children. You are taking care of them and have this responsibility that comes with it, meaning and all these great experiences, but you can't expect from your child to make you feel good, to, as they get older, that they owe you something back, or that they are going to take care of you. It could happen in the future, but you can't go in with that intention. The intention should be one directional. I am going to be taking care of you. So I think it's a wonderful thing to do, but I only would want someone who wants to be a parent to do it. Similarly, if you're a husband and you are thinking about being in the delivery room, you should only be there if you want to, at this level of have that desire, and also if you can be helpful to your partner. So, well, what does that mean to be helpful? One thing I was talking about is being informed, because I think as the husband in the delivery room, dealing with all the commotion and things that are going on, medical professionals and personnel that are there, your wife going through labor, whatever process, whether it's C-section or epidural or or vaginal birth and non-epidural, whatever it is, they're going through a lot. Physical pain, discomfort, especially if it's their first delivery, as it was for my wife. So much is new, and just they don't know or have never experienced it before. So they are obviously very, preoccupied or just occupied with that. And so you need to be the one that's more advocating and communicating, because you are not going through that and you can have that capacity to do so. And so you have to be able to contain what you are going through. Doesn't mean you can't feel a lot, and you will throughout the process, enough that you can then have enough left to support your partner. So we use this term container, emotional containment, as a way of saying that, let's say even your child now, after, let's say they're born, is going through something. The only way you can support them, the only way you can support anyone, is if you can manage your own feelings enough, contain them enough, and have enough room left over to then take on someone else's feelings at the level to be there for them. And so we can't know for sure. I didn't know what it was going to feel like being in the delivery room, but you have to really ask yourself and be aware, okay, can I deal with everything that's going on, from my wife being in extreme pain and possibly yelling or screaming, or not feeling good, to things happening, to seeing blood and all sorts of bodily fluids that come out and are part of the process. Can I take all that, the medical things that are going on? For me, one thing I wasn't sure, my wife wasn't sure. I When someone gets their blood drawn, or if I'm getting especially my blood drawn, I get lightheaded. I'm not good with it, and so I didn't know, and she didn't know if, with all the stuff going on, they right off the bat connect the wife to an IV so that they can already start administering things, but also can easily and swiftly administer something if need be down the line, how that would be for me. Thankfully, I feel like I kind of compartmentalized in a way. So I did actually feel less my own experience because I wanted to be so there for my wife and just so available. That was something that I felt I was able to do fairly well, thankfully, throughout. But I didn't know what I would really be like. I could have, passed out. We heard stories kind of, they're funny in hindsight of, one of my wife's family members saying that they were giving birth and everyone was waiting outside, and then they saw the door open and then someone was coming out and they all thought, oh my God, the baby's coming out. But it was the husband coming out in a stretcher because he had passed out at the sight of, I guess, blood or something. And so the husband was being stretchered out of the delivery room because they passed out, from their own experience of seeing everything going on. So it is tough, of course, hardest on the wife who is delivering, but seeing your partner in pain, seeing all this stuff going on, all the intensity it could be for a long time, hours and hours of this is difficult. So you have to really ask yourself, um, can I handle that, handle myself, see my wife going through this, see everything that's going on, and have enough left over to be a support, both to her physically, emotionally, and also in advocating and communicating to the medical staff about what's going on, what do we want, what are our options, how do we proceed in the best way, making sure that the woman is feeling best about how things are going forward. And there is a lot to do also, and that's what I appreciated from this course that we took. One, giving me some pointers of things I can do, but also two, stimulating the conversations between us, my wife and I, of what she wants and what's going on. And again, we had some conversations, but then in the room, things were in some ways different than we had planned. What she needed from me wasn't exactly what she might have thought she wanted when we were practicing or talking about it. But you really have to ask yourself, okay, can I be that person? And so if you can, and I would say try to prepare yourself to do so, then I think it's a wonderful thing. What a beautiful experience to have been there. I really would have regretted it or have been very sad if I was not there for all of it. But then also for the moment that Keon was born. We hadn't actually given him his name yet. We really wanted to think about it and deliberate about it and see him before we actually gave him the name. Um, but yeah, being there was incredible, and I saw things that were, I'll never forget. Kind of, mind-boggling things of seeing the moment he comes out. I'm very grateful I got to cut the umbilical cord, which was a very special moment as well. I got to do some skin-to-skin contact and got a picture of that, of maybe I think it was less than an hour or so, because first we wanted mom to have the skin-to-skin contact, but I was able to have him on my chest and just hold him with our skin touching and having that beautiful experience. And so I am so grateful for all of that, and I'm glad to have been there to hopefully have been a support to my wife, physically, mentally, emotionally, in whatever ways I could. Also to communicate for her and with her to the staff to see how we could make things the best we possibly could, and then to experience seeing my son, his first moments that he was out, and how quickly my focus was on him and making sure he was okay as they were taking him to get measured and do all sorts of things. First, just to make sure he's okay, make sure he's crying. They don't really smack them on the butt as they used to, see that in movies too, but they even said, we're going to kind of bother him a little bit to get him crying, because they need to cry to get, first of all, just to make sure they're okay, but get some fluids out of their lungs that have been ingested during the birthing process. It's really incredible seeing, again, how much goes into each child being born. and what it is like. It's really unbelievable. And then remembering that each one of us, someone went through that, and through that whole process to make it happen. But yes, as my kind of message to fathers, I would say I would strongly recommend and encourage you to be in the room. One, to be that support to your partner, to give them that, and then two, to have that experience yourself of being there when your child is born, and to be there from those first moments, to have that experience, something that obviously can never be recreated again. And once you miss it, it is gone. So I'm so grateful to have been there. We can ask my wife how grateful she was that I was there. Hopefully, I was a good support. I learned a lot from it, and a lot that I would probably do differently and better if and when we go through that process again. But I'm so grateful that I was there. And as I said, only be there if you want to be there and you really feel that you can manage that enough to be a support to your partner. So we don't want you passing out, as I was saying, that story of our family member, and we don't want you adding more stress to your partner, from your own emotions spilling over physically, that you can't handle it, which again, we have to be real with ourselves, not just, try to play tough guy to ourselves, or think that, well, why would I care? Really try to think about it. And you might even have to remove yourself once it's there, communicating with your partner. As I said, you might have a plan, but the plan might not unfold the way you've thought it out in your own head. So if you are in that boat, I hope you will stay in the room with your partner through that process. Might be many, many hours, as was actually the case for us, but I think an experience that is important not to miss.